Yeah, happy to. We can probably get started.
Okay, is there any intro or something?
Yeah, we can just introduce you guys. Hi, everybody. We don't have video from the room, but I think Carmen has confirmed that those online can hear us. Just let us know if there's any issue. For those who don't know me, I'm Tammy Phillips. I'm the chair of our departmental research committee, and we're very happy to have Michael and Liezel here this morning. Michael from Central Finance now, and Liezel Mitchell from Faculty Finance, talking to us about the Research Finance Gate, which is going to make our lives easier, I think, with grant funding. So with that, Michael, over to you.
Thank you. Liezel, can you just keep an eye out for any chat, like questions and that kind of thing? Especially if someone says they can't hear me. I'm going to go off the camera in a second. I just need to know if I shift position, if the microphone records everything correctly. You need to probably just unmute your microphone if you're in the same meeting. Yes. Morning, everyone. Michael Fanner used to be here. Feels like a decade back. So I'm at Central Research Finance now, Central Research Finance now. So I've been working on this for a hot minute as a solution to try and help finance get the PIs their answers faster, both in terms of the funder financial reports and at the same time building up that their intermediate sort of automated management reports of A level, and sort of quicker turnaround with the answer of how much money do I still have in travel for this month before I need to return the money, those kind of questions. And that's also sort of alleviating the issue whereby you get to after the fact and you discover, oh, I've actually overspent because of this Forex issue or that. And thusly, we now need to find some complementary funding of a project that's aligned with this one, and then things have already closed off, and now you've got this whole big issue of needing to talk to HODs and a whole circle like that. So it's trying to accelerate those kinds of things. So if I'm looking at some of the names in the chat there, I'm seeing more of the researchers, and I'm assuming everyone here would pretty much have the researcher role as well, correct? Yes. There is a project manager role that is imminently due. It's been slated for today or tomorrow onto the production server. You already see it on this development service build. It already exists there. So I'm going to kill my camera, and you can, I believe, see the screen of RFG in the background. So it's a web application. You need to be logged in via UCT's VPN or its eduroam or plugged in via the Ethernet. And we've got a once-off whitelisting procedure that happens. And that just tells the system that you're allowed onto it because it's a secure financial system. It's, funders are meant to know that your stuff's secure. To that end, the system incorporates a whole bunch of things that are not digitized anywhere else in UCT. So SAP has a bit of information, it's got your transactions on it, and ERA has got your contracts in PDF form, where you probably have to dig through possibly multiple ERA references and see this one's the MTA, that one's the subaward, this one's a year 2 carryover mention. You've got multiple ERA links for the same contract, and possibly none of those PDFs is your complete budget as it stands now for everything of the complete picture. There might be little incremental things. And usually you have to go inside a PDF to try and extract information about what did this do or where is it at. So unfortunately, there's a few things that finance needs to set up on RFG in terms of bringing in the project, and from there it can pull down the transactions from SAP and allow people to classify things and change the dates or set the periods, all that kind of information. So usually the flow is that, for example, in your case, Liezel and team, when they find time, so that's something you liaise with them, they would create your project on it. And that can be anything from 2 minutes to, if there's like monthly reports for the last 4 years that they need to try and match the financials up with this offline Excel document, then it might be 8 hours even. It really depends on how complex the reporting is and how much they needed to match up historically. But once it's been created and there's 1 or 2 projects on there that look familiar to the PI, then we typically invite the PI on. Otherwise, you're just going to get to this main dashboard and you're going to see a screen that says, please create a project. There's nothing for you to see here. So that's the normal sort of introduction process onto the system. So yes, it does pull information from SAP, but there's information that isn't digitized anywhere else that is needed to create a correct financial report for a lot of things. So this is the entry point when everyone logs into the web app. So it shows you all of the projects that has been created for you that you've been invited onto with various roles. So I've got a whole list of them here that I can click on and explore into. So say I wanted to see that one. I can now normal left click, or I can right click, and I can drill down further into it. You'll see it's open a new tab just like browsers do. And now I get more information about how it's been spent during that period and stuff. Just let me know if I need to zoom in if someone in the comments says it's too small on the shared screen. So yeah, you can, on this list on the left, the main dashboard gives you a rough overview of where everything is. So you can hover over some charts and you can see that it's popped up the headings and said how much balance remaining you have in the funder currency. There's a drop-down list that one can access there where you then click on certain, which other projects you want to see. Yeah.
Thanks. So total budget, is that the total budget for the whole project period?
The whole project on this view, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and total spent, and then you'll see in tiny beneath it, it says there's ZAR for those, and that when it says GBP, it's telling you the reporting currency, because ultimately that's what matters. I mean, if you can add in guesstimates for a ZAR conversion of remaining budget. So this is a high-level view of where something is at, and from there you go over to the other two dashboards that I'll show. It'll more zoomed in on a specific project. Further down on this page, depending on how far you're zoomed in, so it is a sort of standard web browser type thing, so you can zoom in or out and do a few other things, open new tabs and such.
So can I just interrupt? So if I was the PI, this would be my projects then. So I would see that, let's say I had 5 projects and
yes.
My dashboard will have 5 projects listed.
Yes, if 5 projects were created and you're invited onto them, yes.
That's it, but that's it, that's all I can see.
So sorry, you're taking questions. So you first said you'd have a researcher or a project manager profile. So a PI would be a researcher profile.
Yes, yes.
If you have a multi-country study with partners with sub-grants under you, would you be seeing something for the main?
At this point,
sub-grant, would you be seeing the?
In the project plan, there is plans for developing sort of a host, project that houses multiple other ones. Yeah. At the moment, you would just typically create one project on the system for each section that we need to isolate to be able to report on. Doesn't mean per fund, you can have multiple fund numbers linked to a project, but just in terms of isolation, you'd create one each at a time, and then typically finance would, like they do at the moment with Excel spreadsheets, just have an Excel spreadsheet that merges them, because this allows export of a lot of information to Excel. Yeah. Down the line, possibly still this year, there's plans to go sort of a host project type thing where you can say, this one absorbs information from that one and that one and that one from that faculty and that kind of stuff.
Can you take an answer to the question? So sorry, this is great, but when do you do this? So is it pre-awards? Is it post-awards only?
At the moment.
Would a PhD putting in for a welcome grant, PhD budget?
So it's not actually restricted in that sense. You could add a project with your salary fund and your non-specific investment fund and stuff like that. And I'll show you transactions there. The one limitation is just it doesn't have transactions prior to 2018. There was just voted there was not a need for that level of information going back that far. So it's not limited in what you link as a project. You could use it for non-GOB projects as well, because they frequently have similar information needed as research, classifications and date periods and that kind of stuff. Yeah. You're going to get less benefit out of this if your project is literally aligned to UCT's calendar year and ZAR based and doesn't need categorized reporting into funder headings or their defined categories as per your pre-awards budget or their project call. Might have certain headings that you needed to report in, or SF424 and you add those headings to reporting. If it doesn't have that, you're not going to get much more out of this than you do out of BobJ at present. You'll get a list of what your site budget remaining is, and you'll get your transactions, and if that's all you need to manage your thing, especially if you also have RIB, if literally the budget load is the actual budget and all you've got to spend at the moment. I mean, you could, if you wanted to see more from this app specifically and have everything linked there, but it's not going to enrich your life for those kind of, shall I say, simplistic reporting needs.
Sorry, Michael, sorry, with the non-GOB funds, are we able to add that?
Yeah.
Us?
Or you just link
No,
it.
no, no, okay, so it's not restricted like SAP, but.
How do you mean?
We don't
If
have
you've got-
access to non-GOB funds.
Well, okay, no. Remember, it's going to check your credentials when you link the thing. So if you get someone that has got access to link it up to the project and then invite you on, I don't know if that's a Darren or Sally or what that would be, but if you suppose they can invite you, same as you can set someone's Bobja up and then have them add it to the email address, even though they don't have the SAP fund access to that.
Can I ask a question? I'm new to this space, and so what I want to know, what is the interface between the application phase and you receiving confirmation that your grant application is successful?
Okay, so the question, if it wasn't come clear, sorry, I'm just now thinking like maybe people don't hear via my microphone what the audience is asking. But essentially, what's the process between the grant application and notifications and that and this application? Absolutely none. That works by the normal ERA process. At the moment, this application is purely post-award based. That being said, so we've got a bunch of roles inside RFG. You've got the researcher role, which is primarily viewing only access. They can rename some scientific things in the project. They can add comments and tags next to individual transactions. This was laptops for student X and Y or things like that. Or even to finance, that I've seen people, researchers using it as a communication tool with finance, like why is this here or shouldn't this be under that fund or things like that. And they've got the ability to change like a guesstimate foreign exchange rate to say, right, if the ZAR was at 18 by the end of the period, how much money would I have left in ZAR based on the available spend? So they've got a very limited, there's a new project manager role that's imminently due that basically allows for a one level up. So they can't create projects and the only thing that they can do is they can classify transactions. So if they can get to it more frequently than finance is able to, perhaps the PI then has more frequent up-to-date information. And then when finance has its time, then it goes and reviews and either ratifies or amends the decision made there. Then you've got the various levels of finance roles in terms of Liezel's level and the one up with Darren's level, for example. At the moment, it's not pulling any information from ERA. I'm not aware that ERA is actually exporting any information from itself. So the idea is this is independent of finance is, for example, aware that they're the only ones that can create a new project. They're aware that something's been awarded. They're either in touch with you or via their other channels. They create this when they are ready. So that can be at the pre-award stage that they already, load up the budget and stuff. Of course, there won't be a fund number to link yet, or sort of allocations to be done, but they could theoretically even load it up then. I mean, you could technically even create a project that isn't even awarded yet. We think it's going to exist. Like a hypothetical extension of that would be, so there's a salary task team that's looking at the various things about how you can do allocations or the reconciling sheets of whose payroll is going where for which month, if you needed to do reallocations more frequently, shuffle people between the projects. And if that function is eventually deemed to be with an RFG rather than an external application, then, for example, it would be useful for you loading a project that hasn't fully gone through the whole ERA cycle, but I mean, you're 99% sure it exists, so that you can do your salary allocation planning of, in 5 months' time, I'm going to have these salaries, and it's already from this project, that you're able to plan for, even though you're not actually able to claim from it yet, because it doesn't physically exist as a, signed off project that's got a fund number open, all of that. But I mean, for planning purposes, you would need to have it in advance. So the answer is none at all, except for what the user creates.
Thanks,
Okay, it's the main dashboard's got other loose information, like you can hover over a project and see, right, for these fund numbers linked to it, how much do I have SAP budget remaining? So that's, if you wanted to spend a purchase order, will it be rejected? And this has got a to be upgraded soon Gantt chart as well. These are how my projects align in terms of their timelines. So soon this will likely get extra information also to say, right, this is when a financial period's when they cut off. So that you can see, right, if these two were complementary projects, there's a deadline here where my financials sort of lock in about there. So if I needed to spend on the one versus the other and I've got complementary things happening, then this is a priority for whatever reason. Right, just on some of the other information, so you've got a list of all your projects. You've got 2 links per project. So let me just go back to this. So I'm just going to right-click and open a new tab and right-click on a new tab. That's how I'm choosing to do it at the moment. It gives you your total budget as well across the entire project, the currency, your total remaining spend, and it might have additional things like finance can set a flag saying, right, you know, they've looked at it, it's up to date until this point. There might also be additional comments that they've made. You know, maybe you need to look at the March travel, and there's actually a little indication says, right, there's new transactions that have appeared from SAP since you last looked at that project. So it's not going to track each individual transaction with you allocated, just you've looked at transactions, you know, there's nothing to be seen here. It's got a filter for you to get there. So of these 2 links, the bold ones will open up a context menu. You've always got a context menu once you're in the project that takes you through the various views, but it gives you a more detailed view of the various headings and how much money they've got remaining. And it also gives you a bit more detailed charts. Like you can see here, right, of the budget of 208K across the entire project of euros, you've spent half, you know, 50% remaining. So it's got those bars. Yes, there are a bunch of negatives on this project. Don't ask me why, but yes. And know that the fund numbers and everything is denatured. So yeah, gives you a SAP budget remaining again. And it also gives you information about the different budget periods. In this case, it's one budget period. It's not split in some funny way.
Well, the question was there. Sorry. So the currency issue. So it's, I saw you referring to euros or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it dominant in euros?
Sorry, is it?
In euros, or would it be linked to where the funding comes from, or do you convert it to rand? At what point do you convert it into rands? And then what's the issue of the exchange rate loss or profit?
Okay, so the question is about the Forex side of things and how it's converted. So when the project's created, again, there's limited information that it could pull from ERA. It's not based on where the funder is from, because I've seen frequently enough there are funders that allow, like Welcome Trust, that allow you to, with motivation, pick your currency. Or perhaps they funded some other location, like they, not necessarily Welcome, but they funded maybe a US one that's then giving us to us in dollars. So while the primary original funder was pounds, in our situation, we're reporting in dollars, hypothetically. So it's set by finance for each project, what the reporting currency is for the project. They have got screens as well for finance where they can set the various, budgetary and financial periods. We'll talk about that in a second. But essentially they can set the conversion rates for the various periods. That'll do by default for the whole period. And they can even go into individual line items and say, no, this is superseded because the funder needs it to be in some other, you know, they've got some other rule for conversion. So the default is that it takes the SAP transactions, which are in ZAR. So yes, there will be certain foreign calculations that the finance people do with, there was a foreign amount on SAP itself for the receipts, and they'll figure out, right, what is the exchange rate for that. But it's got its own set of conversions that's allowed for the transactions to work it from ZAR into whatever the funder's reporting currency is, and then by extension, whatever you've got left to spend and whatever needs to go on the funder's financial report. So it's custom based on the period and the transaction itself, which rate is used and the rules of that funder about which rate is used and what you do with the Forex differences, that's up to the finance person.
Whether it's fixed or variable.
Exactly. Unfortunately, trying to code those things for all the various rules, or trying to code in a reporting template the funder wants, between this one wants a website, that one wants a PDF, this one wants an Excel sheet, but it's the same new Excel sheet for that project and that new project and this existing project, but not that old existing project. There's just too many options there. So those kind of things, and like environment rules about what happens when you overspend, that 100% leave with the people, human intelligence, to sort out. Because you might also have things that aren't even digitized, like you might have an email saying, no, this amount of excess spend in that category, it's allowed, you know, you can do it. You know, it's not something I can pull off the system. This sheet that you're seeing there, this dashboard, and it's got all this level of detail of the various categories that this funder wants to have you report back on. It can be simple, it can be complex. So for example, on this sheet, this project, it's extremely simplistic. It's literally got just one period spanning the entire project, and they don't have to split it all the various headings. So it depends on the project how complicated it needs to be, and this is very modular. So I mean, you could have something that's ZAR, only has one period, only has one heading, done. And that requires less effort, obviously, than defining the various groups and categories get split into. There is also a function depending on the project. If there is more than one budget, then this application allows one to set that. And by that, no, I don't want to go into a screen right now. Finance already set it up for the specific project, that these headings, and they can have subtotals, so you can see how they feed in. So there's a personnel cost subtotal in here that these two line items above it feed into. So they've already set it up using certain pathways to say, right, this feeds into that, that feeds into that, this is how much you have. But they can also set up multiple versions of budget so that you can see how did you spend versus your actual year one versus when you got the carryover, and now all of the year one budgets essentially got zeroed out for the remaining spend. You know, so you can see what it was before those things got cleared off and translated into year two. Or you might have an internal plan budget because, you know, you applied for this 5 years ago, it's only been awarded now, and things have changed in your operations since. So you might have different spend that you're planning to do, and you'd rather monitor it using that. So it's got the option to then change by these little drop boxes at the top to see some other version of the budget against it. From the main dashboard, the secondary not bold link, and this link over here, financial dashboard, this is the more detailed version where it tells you the more nitty-gritty information and less charts and stuff. So it's going to hide this sidebar. So this would be the full layout, typically what appears on a funder financial report. You know, they want to know how you report spent against all of your expenses. And in this case, there happens to be, for that entire budget, there happens to be 3 different reporting periods where it says, right, you know, you're reporting from this point to this point. Now what you've done is locked in. You give us a financial report. Now we're doing to that period, to that period. In this context, though, this project doesn't have any separate fund budget periods. So that might be like an NIH where they say, right, you don't have automatic carryover. Your budget is for year one only. After that, it falls away unless we're extremely nice and we give you some carryover. So in those situations, you might have multiple budget periods. That's sort of a self-contained. You're allowed to spend this budget between that point and that point. Now, within the budget periods, you might have multiple financial reporting periods that also. So this predefines these things, finance predefines these things that RFG automatically recombines and says, right, these transactions fall into these dates. And it does also allow finance to change the reporting date of something. So the auditors can clearly see this was my transaction. This is when we booked the flight and it was invoiced and everything as per SAT. But based on the funder rules, you report when the flight actually happens. So it's actually in this reporting period that it falls into. So they can see that clear trace from beginning to end. So as I said, this is the more extensive version that shows you, right, what was these costs in ZAR, the non-reportable items, like perhaps your income non-reportable, or you got some transfers and stuff happening back on the done. They're still there, everything's reflected, nothing is hidden, just they don't get shown on the face page as being reduced against one of those expenses. And it's also got a whole list of all the transactions and how they apply and how they reduce your daily budget and all that kind of happy stuff, and some reconciling items and summaries of your interest gained and your floats and advances at the bottom. May or may not be useful depending on your management style. Also an expense dashboard may or may not be useful, just generally just by categorize. If you've got linear spend on your project, then this table over here might, or chart over here might also be useful. It just takes and says, right, based on, okay, this project's already done or close to done. It figures out how many calendar months you've got remaining in the current budget period before your budget cycles over to the next period or your project's complete. It figures out how many calendar months you're remaining, and then it says, right, your average monthly spend for the remaining amount of budget you have, for the remaining amount of calendar months you have is X. How much have you spent currently this month already, and how much have you spent in the past 3 months? So if your project's in period, and if you're looking at some kind of controllable but very linear spend, then obviously you can look at that for some information.
Can I ask another question, Michael? So what's the service cost for this? Is it a percentage of your budget? Or, oh,
Well,
Okay, no, so indirectly. So you're paying, some of you are paying indirects, which goes into a magical black hole of costs that then disappears into central and gets recycled 5 times until it gets to various salaries of people at a central level, of which I am one. So if you want to know that, that's the indirect version. In terms of the directs, you won't see anything.
when you do a budget through ERA, the finance advisor, budget health advisor will, so they're the indirects, but then they'll also put a portion towards the procurement person and a ethical or something.
That's purely the Liezels, etc. in your
It's
servicing you
rewards.
directly. I won't appear on your pre-awards thing there. I'm part of that. I'll be part of that. I guess mystery 8% or 15% or whatever. I don't even know where they. I don't ask where central sources things from and how they.
again, the stats that I wanted, yeah, I mean, that 8%.
You are not getting charged something additionally that I'm aware of.
For the RFG, no, this is.
Mm.
This is like ERA. You know, you've got access to it.
There's another
So Liezel, then I should direct the question to you. What percentage do you charge
for what? For RFG?
for funding supports?
It depends how much you put in on the project application, and also dependent on the funder who's, that will vary from
So it's
funder
a
project to project.
Thanks.
Yes.
They'll put it in for you.
Yes, they will.
Graciously, they will add. Yes.
If you want to take it away, you have a conversation.
Andrea, how often is the information updated? One is going to use the info for knowing how much one pool has to spend.
Okay, I'm going to circle back to that. I just need to explain 1 or 2 things more about its features. Right, the other things should be fairly self-explanatory. The PI, the researcher role on the system, is able to make very limited changes in things like, okay, what you're seeing currently is not the researcher role. You'll see a lot more of the fields are accessible because of my level of access, but you'll be able to change, for example, the scientific title of the project. But there are certain other things that I've locked away. So, for example, the nickname of the project, the short name of the project, and that exists and it has to be unique per PI, specifically because I've seen in health sciences, the same department, I can't remember if it might have even been the same PI that had exactly the same scientific title from exactly the same funder happening at the same time, and now people get confused. And not everyone uses the fund number. So in this case, they chose to add the fund number into the sort of nickname of the project, but it's just something that you agree with Liezel them. This is what I want to call this project. If I'm talking about this, you know uniquely what I'm talking about. There isn't confusion about it. Hypothetically, maybe someday in the future, you know, RC and I could also use this nickname if they need to refer to a project. But at the moment, it's just a link to an ERA if, you know, Liezel and choose to append that. If you want to change that, the research role doesn't have access to change that because I don't want you accidentally changing it. And then Liezel has no clue what happened to the projects that she's meant to be administering. Just get hold of it and have it change it for you. So if there's something that you cannot edit that you feel needs to change, just get in touch with whoever's on finance side servicing you. From the project dashboard, there's also these 2 little items for viewing and updating projects. So if you wanted to zoom in more, so instead of going on late Thursday night going, what's happening to this project? You email Liezel on Friday morning and say, please give me a new list of the transactions. Liezel gives you a list of transactions. Maybe they can do extra work or not, but they give you that. Then on Friday night, you decide to go and look at it, or even Monday night. Now you're in a different mindset. You go and look at it. Then you discover, wait, why are these 2 transactions? Why is it duplicate? It shouldn't be here. You get back to Liezel. With this, you can look at it from top level and go, right, you know, why have I got such a massive overspend in this specific category? You know, what's happening here, what's not? So you can go, right, you know, why is this negative? So any of these blue text or blue buttons, they're links to a new page. So now I can go, right, I can look at personnel costs, you know, part 2, PI number 2, or I can look at the entire everything, you know, one of these links, or I can look at specifically personnel costs for PI2 under this period, and I go and click on that, and then I see the transactions for that. Now this has been denatured, so you'll see that those there's a lot of X's and stuff in the SAP text and the fund center and that kind of thing. But you'll get the transactions as they appear from SAP in addition to whatever accruals has been made on the system, completely stuff not existing on SAP. Finance might have to do certain accruals and reconciling items and postings. On here, you can get a full list of that. And this is also accessible via that view transactions thing. And from here, there's little extra buttons that you could do to write. I want to see certain filters, and I want to look on the text for, I only want to see GL code. Oh, these are all 1760. That's not the best filter. You can search for certain filters for certain items, or you can reverse the reporting date or sort on some other criteria. There are links here to go, right, is it from the ERP, from SAP, or is it something that's been accrued to by finance? And whatever you see here, you can also export to Excel, and you'll get an extract of that. And you can also, if you click to update below transactions, it's literally just this following link, except it's already applied whatever filters or view you've had for that. And as researchers, you won't be able to change the category that it's reported under or the reporting date that it deviates from what SAP said it is, but we know it needs to be reported under X or Y. What the PI can, however, do is they can add a comment here. So here I can say this was laptop for student X, or maybe it's some communication, as I said, to Liezel, and they're like, please check out this line item. So you're flagging it. And when you do it, it's not like an offline Excel spreadsheet where you need to share it. Once you've submitted this change, everyone on RFG that access that project will be able to see that comment, be able to react on it as necessary. Just probably do send them an email, because it's not going to send you a ping. There's no facility like that at the moment where it alerts you to changes. People can request that later.
So what's the GL code?
General ledger code. If you look on SAP, all of your transactions from your funds will have a fund number attached, a fund center, a cost center, and then a general ledger code. So it's just a code where they go, this is S&T, or this is travel, or this is...
Oh, okay. So I thought, okay, that's it.
So
It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It is a number. It is a number.
1700.
It is 100%
Okay.
a number, and for projects that aren't denatured, there will also be a GL name that appears there. It says,
Supply, materials and supplies.
yes, that kind of, well, I don't know if materials supplies is that a GL? Yeah.
Like rental, consumables.
That said, so for example, in this case, this project has got two different PIs that it needs to report on separately within the same report to the funder. So for the GL codes, what you'd have is you'd have S&T and travel and flights and those kind of things. So we've got those categories, but for the funder report, we need to tell them what was travel for PI1, travel for PI2. So that incorporates S&T, travel, flights, accommodation for PI1, and then there's a separate ones for PI2. So this is where finance comes in and says, right, this was actually travel for PI1, as was this, and all the way up to there, and they can then classify it. And as soon as they submit changes for this, whenever you refresh a page in RFG, it's already reconfigured your financials to reflect that. So on the fly. So this is where it's doing stuff that is not innately there in SAP and so on. This is stuff that typically finance has to do by doing an extract of Excel from what SAP's saying, and then they need to go and key certain things and refresh the various tables. And the idea being that this classification is faster than they can do in Excel, and it automatically generates all those dashboards that you've seen. Whether that's all the dashboards you require to make a decision making off, probably not, but as I said, there are Excel extracts that they can link with whatever existing reporting structure that you might have for your making reports. There is from the researcher role, so you're able to add a comment, you're also able to add a tag. So that's a third, or I guess if you count GLs, a fourth dimension of categorizing stuff. And it's just like a 8 to 10 digit code that you can attach. So say you were spending money throughout a whole bunch of projects on breathalyzers, and you wanted to isolate that cost. So as the researcher as well, or the project manager or finance, you can go and edit that tag and just create something. Now, as long as you create, always type in breathalyzer or breath or whatever your, code is, later on when you extract things, you can look across the projects, what have I spent on breathalyzers. So that doesn't have to be a certain type of product or purchase per se, whatever definition you might have for I want to isolate these costs. whether it's in the project or across multiple. So you're able to, if you look at something and it looks funny, you're able to go down even to the transactional level, should you wish to, and then probably get to back to Liezel on the Friday morning, like, why is this duplicate? Why is this there? So you've already sort of, while you're in the same mindset, you're able to look at a few things. So circling back to the question of how frequently is it up to date, that one I leave with finance. I don't make any promises that they're going to get back to you 10% faster or anything like that. I've heard from a bunch of finance people that it is faster. At least once you've created the project, you've gone through a one-time process of digitizing information that's never been digitized before, in an extractable, homogeneous, validated way. Once it's on there, obviously it's a lot faster for them to maintain, which is the entire purpose of this. In terms of how frequently they visit, the project and update it and have everything, that's up to them. So that's a mixture between they've emailed you and they said it's up to date for now, or you're otherwise in correspondence with them via Teams, etc., the normal communication channels. They've got a date field that they can set. It says, hey, finance reckons that this is up to date until X or Y. And if they've set it, it appears in the main dashboard, and it also appears right at the bottom of this little project context tab here. But I mean, there's always going to be something of, even when we get the project manager role, if you happen to have an intermediary sort of person within your unit that is able to and wanting to look at the project more frequently, able to update these categories, it still, is best if finance goes in, because they might disagree and say, look, according to the final rules, law on the letters, it needs to go under here. So your budget and your headings and how up to date they are is going to be a bit more frequent than before, more frequently, more accurate. Once the exchange rates change, it's automatically updated itself to, the more accurate answer in terms of, is it the final accurate answer? That's a question with finance. So if you go into a project outside of looking at finance set to date or Liezel, or someone emailed you and said, right, this is up where it's up to date till, or it's, right, or it's right, but it's up to claim finance values. It's from there, it's the usual question of just, right, why is something being a duplicate, or why is something so low? What's the reason for the number? Of course, if a project is actually locked off or invoiced, that would imply that that section is fully complete and accurate. I believe it was Andrea that asked the question.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if that answers the question.
Michael, do the SAP records still in?
These, except for the accruals made inside RFG only, which SAP knows nothing about, and SAP probably shouldn't do anything about, because some of these things are reconciling items that never ever get posted to SAP, but they do need to exist. Outside of those, these are SAP records. Okay. You're just seeing them slightly funny and appear with a bunch of X and stuff because I've denatured these.
So your general transactions would come through all the time. The bit that might be out of date would be something that a finance person needs to.
The data warehouse exports to SAP every sort of overnightly. So what you're getting from Bob J and what you're getting from RFG is as at last night in terms of SAP information, both in terms of, you'll see lower down here is a link for commitments. So both for commitments and the SAP transactions is as at last night. Anything else that gets changed in RFG itself is instantaneous once you reload the page. So it'll pull through from SAP your SAP budget remaining, it'll pull through your transactions and your commitments. I do, in the nearby future, just need to make a patch whereby things that are non-research funds for pre-2018, I just need to get their opening balances fixed. Anything post-2018 is active. Any other useful things? Not that much. Edina, you were asking about the foreign exchange rates. At the moment, it still needs to import a few more things from the data warehouse to be fully, like it doesn't know, for example, yet whether a fund is RIB or spend and claim, but either way, there are a few more extra steps needed for Forex calculations. Like it's not helping people with first in, first out or those kind of processes yet. So at the moment, it just allows capture of a amount saying, right, you've got RIB differences or there's a spend and claim differences, that kind of thing. That will be upgraded in the future. So at the moment, it just allows one to specify, right, there is this difference, and you might have seen at the top of the project or financial dashboard that it might post a little message saying, right, you've got this amount of Forex loss that needs to be posted somewhere. So it's just a notification at the moment about that. There is one additional thing that the researcher role can do on this page, and they can set this estimated ZAR. So you can change this, and once, where's the green button? Green submit button, there we go. And now when I go back to a project dashboard, both the project dashboard and expense dashboard, if there is a value in there, it creates a fourth chart that tells you estimated ZAR remaining. So that's literally these blue amounts from how much is remaining there, but translated at that exchange rate. So it's not changing any of the financial streams, but as a PI, you're able to just change the guesstimate rate and then go and view those charts and say, how might it look if it turned out like this? That's of course also not related to the claimability of things. And again, pending on either project manager or the financial people having categorized the stuff so that, you know, it knows where to categorize. It's not an unallocated, not reportable bin because it doesn't know where to allocate it. And hypothetically, although that's not going to be anytime soon, maybe one day we get to a point where your purchase order requests already capture which heading it is, that the system can then check both your SAP budget remaining as well as the funder budget remaining, and then act on that in terms of if you're authorized to know financial information, let you know, right, this is overspending on this category. And or that it then already at that source point knows the correct heading to allocate things towards. So sure you'll get a lot more of it housed and reflected in the right spots. Okay, I don't think I need to specifically give training at the moment for the project manager role, unless you think someone in this meeting is likely for that.
Just a simple question about that role. If you're a PI managing a larger grant, wouldn't it make more sense than to just give yourself that project manager role? Or I'm just talking more about if you hire a project manager.
That isn't, no. The roles on the system are independent from, you know, your employment contract or what you actually physically do. You know, some people are called admins and that. In terms of if you were someone who's a bit more proactive about those classifications than that, then by all means, it'll be a case of talk to Liezel, because she'll then say, right, you know, she'd rather have all of that with finance, or no, great, you should be doing a good job with this, so, you know, have at it. They'll still need to create the structure of the project for you, the skeleton, you know, what are the budget periods, the financial periods, you know, various headings and stuff. But, you know, from there, you'd be able to classify the headings and change the dates. So, hypothetically, yes. I've also had researchers on the system and other faculties that are finance roles, so. Depends on the structure of the faculty and who's who.
In terms of when would be the best time to sign up? It sounds like it's quite a mission, or it's more time consuming for it to take an existing grant and load it in. But moving forward, should we be thinking of like, okay, I've got a new grant, it's been awarded, like set this up from the start?
So yes, a new grant from the start is obviously a little easier. In terms of old projects, there is also facilities whereby if you just agree with these, like, look, I don't care about anything before 2022. So then the project gets loaded up, and either it gets loaded up with only part of the budget, or she just leaves it that everything before 2022 is amorphous, and it just says singular line items that accrue for an opening balance for what there was. So you don't see any detail of what was before. That can always get changed down the line if they manage to find time. Sometime they can go and add that detail. But in the meantime, they can just say, look, these are the balances that there were. No detail behind that, don't care, moving on. So
use the perspective functionality,
yeah, for the going forward. So
how is the project going to be rolled out to the faculty?
it is already.
So how am I going to be able to benefit from this, as an example?
Yes, so it is purely a function of finance time on getting around to it. As I said, there is a bit of a conversion depending on the project. Some of them are very, very quick. Some of them require a bit more. You have to set up the headings and go and classify things for the past couple of years. And while I've put in various tools for them to go and paste directly from their Excel financial into RFG what things were classified as, what their forex rates were for back in the day, it takes a bit more time depending. So once there's a couple of one or more projects loaded up that you would recognize, starting some kind of still needs half its categories and the periods don't make sense yet, then typically we whitelist the researcher, and then you're able to, as I said, log onto the system. Finance is also able to invite other people onto the project, so you're not restricted to just you having access. You know, she can invite other PIs onto it, or some of your staff, if they need to see the financials, they can also be invited on as well.
So Liezel, what is your office's capacity to load new projects onto this? No, I mean, are we encouraging people to start using this, or are we saying, you know, next year when you get a nice big grant, you know, I mean, I'm trying to assess the, I mean, your office is pretty strained anyway with regards to staffing capacity. So do you want us to ask you, or do you want us to wait to be asked?
No, they want the PIs to use the RFG, and it's benefit for everyone once it's up and running, you know. So what we have done, like last month, everyone had to start loading, like say, 2 projects in their portfolio. So obviously the projects that are coming to an end, we won't load those, you know, type of thing or whatever. So yes, and also PIs that requested, so we only loaded like sided so far. And so obviously as the request comes in, you know, we won't,
So those are enthusiastic.
Yes. For some PIs, sorry, some PI, I've loaded the projects, but it's too busy to look at it.
What?
Jeez.
But is it you who does it, or is it Alan and Sarah, or, I mean, surely it would depend on the team.
The FOs and the SFOs are all, all try to upload.
So because when you said cider, that means the PIs within cider, not cider as one entity.
No.
Okay.
And by extension, it depends really on the research group, where there's more, it's the project managers that look at it. You know, is it a, I don't know if that's still connected, like for example, is it a Landon that looks at it, or is it a Carmelita that uses it more? You know, because some PIs prefer to work via their administrator, manager person, you know, and that one is the one that's using RFG to get information, and, you know, they feed back into the PI. It depends.
And we still have an option to continue as before and ask you to help us, for example, as opposed to do it ourselves.
The do-it-yourself, that project manager role, isn't it? It is one possibility for if there is capacity inside the research group and they want to classify things earlier, you know, then there's that. But the default is still, you know, that it's finance supporting you and you're getting the reports. Just hopefully it's slightly faster for finance, at least once it's up, once the project's been created. It's slightly faster for finance to monitor as new stuff happen on the project. Let's quickly go and classify those. And then, as I said, these levels of management reports are automatically created. These dashboards are automatically created by the system. So you can access it whenever. You know, the question is then how accurate are the numbers? How up to date are they? Is there anything that needs to be posted or anything that's inappropriate? You know, I've got refreshments on my NaH. Shouldn't be there, that kind of stuff.
I think this is great. I mean, just to even mind saying. I mean,
I don't.
no, I mean, I don't. No, I mean, I think this would have been very useful for some of my older grants, especially because we don't all have access to SAP. So in a sense, just being able to see that and the glass is really
you do currently have BobJet, right?
So I was going to ask what that is. I've
We
never
don't.
heard of that before.
Wait, what?
But we didn't increase the budget reports. Oh, okay, that's also like a...
What? Liezel?
She's got a different finance team.
Oh, no, we're not part of, sorry,
So so anyway, the point is this kind of thing we're making ourselves.
Yes.
We don't have to keep on asking for help. I think will be fantastic.
BobJet is another system that UCT has had for a couple of years and interrogates certain information from SAP. I indirectly piggyback off some of the data that pulls off SAP, you know, that was created, those exports in part for BobJet, and I use some of those exports in certain ways as well to get my information. So basically how most researchers experience BobJet is it would be probably a weekly, maybe monthly email that comes through. There's a spreadsheet attachment that says, right, you know, this is your transactions, and maybe a little face page of information that SAP has. So SAP knows your GL, SAP knows your SAP budget remaining, you know, what you can buy off purchase order. So those kind of things. So sort of like a SAP Excel extract of the transactions.
Without asking, it's like
Automated, yeah.
Automated,
The finance officer seems to
yes.
It was important to you perhaps make a recommendation that, so let's just say for argument's sake, someone who has a new project that's going to run, let's say for 3 years or 5 years, to register, and have access to that system. Because I would assume that it would ease the burden in your office, because, the controls, the reporting will be covered.
So the plan is to obviously load all the new projects and stuff, but it's going, I think, slow across the department, because the setup takes some time. So what I find is when I ask them to do it, because of time constraint, they don't do it. Then they'll just do the report in the Excel and not maybe do the RFG, type of thing. But they should do it together, like start out, together. But they're supposed to load 2 new projects every month going forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
you can ask your finance officer, so when you meet with your finance with us or everything, you can request. Well, yeah, if you're not getting a Bob J or whatever, you can ask us, no problem.
I hope people online are hearing your response.
Yes, they can ask.
No, I'm saying I'm hoping the people online that are hearing through my microphone, Liezel's response of researchers can request it when there's a new project, especially coming through. They can request with Liezel then that it be created on RFG, and then as soon as something's visible there, that they then get invited onto the system and sent all the links
You see
to access it.
What happens sometimes is if the PI don't request a meeting, the finance officer won't request a meeting. And that's the thing. So please just request a meeting, and then we can discuss what needs to be discussed at the meeting.
Can I just ask, once you've done the setup, what else needs to be loaded manually? So SAP comes in,
Yes.
but the salaries and stuff, does that have to be loaded automatically?
Yeah. So we must still do it on Excel.
If the payroll needs to be split, then it's not automatic. Then it's like the SAP.
You mean if you've got 50% on this person, this project, and 50% on this project?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if your UO payroll postings and stuff, you will see those line items appear. If those funds were linked to the project, and I don't know if I covered this, but you can link multiple things ring fenced for the project to it. So you can have the primary, fund that it's using. The old fund number it used to use before Arsie and I told you to change it for VAT purposes. The investment fund ring fenced for this project. You can have all of them feed into it. But so if it's a URL payroll posting or something like that is already accurate, you will see it here. If Liezel, etc., needed to split it or needed to do certain allocations, at the moment that stuff's still offline in Excel, and I think it will be for a amount of time for the future until we.
Yeah. So also bear in mind, if someone is paid 100% of a project, right? In your ledger, you will only see UO payroll posting. So that doesn't mean anything to the PI. Also. So we still have to. I suppose I can mark it as I can allocate it to personnel.
You could. It depends if they want that detail. Otherwise, you mark it as not reportable and then put it in accruals. Split it into the various ones. It's either or.
Yeah.
That's if the salary comes off the project,
Off the
not off the
project.
salary. So all our salaries come out of the salary.
Salary.
So then you have to manually put all of that into
in
the
there.
So she'll then use the accruals and reconciling items to go and post those items onto the project. If it hasn't already been transferred and there's a line item inside that.
Is that still quicker with RFG?
I don't know if it's quicker, it's about the same, because when you draw a separate payroll posting, because you can in RFG copy and paste the results from your Excel sheet, so it takes you 10 seconds longer to reflect that in RFG. But RFG, as I said, there's no application or more of that we're using at present that allows the allocations and the transfer of those payroll items. It's always a separate extract and a separate thing. I am aware that Bob J is getting an payroll report soon, probably very soon, but yeah, we don't have it yet.
Also bear in mind.
But that's also not an allocation. That's just
that's
the payroll things, and then you still need to probably take that Excel spreadsheet and again manipulate it to be what it needs to be for this person allocated there, there, and there, or maybe it's a changing schedule, and then taking the results back into either your Excel financial spreadsheet or your RFG. And then
so the payroll ledger in the Bob J.
I'm certain at this point.
What I was going to say, so like in Emma's case, right, so Emma has only the salary fund, but some PIs have multiple funds, like some people are on the non-JOB, some people are Western Cape, some people are, so sometimes the finance officers, depending on them, they would obviously, it's not a matter of just downloading one report. They will download, like, say, 6 reports, for example. But I've shown, you know what I mean? And that's the thing. With the pay slips, they must build the ledger manually. For Andrew and for
the government post.
Yes,
Yeah.
for and for anyone like say John at the Google then also, you know what I mean? Pay slips. So we have to manually create those things.
You're making me less and less keen on working on a payroll.
No, work on the payroll. I'm just saying that is.
It's important because
it's not that big.
I'm aware. It's just there are many chickens,
I understand.
many cats in the same bag on that one about how it should be run, what people do.
In Emma's case, the operating. That's also a manual thing that we need to do.
Yeah, so the staff expenses are very specific.
So that's not so helpful for
Yeah.
you.
If there's external allocations of like some kind of overhead cost or office space or whatever else, that stuff will still be, you probably checking it or cross-referencing on an Excel spreadsheet, and then pasting the results of that back into RFG, either an accrual or as an allocation, whatever.
And that is why accruals is not, I can't say it doesn't work, it obviously works with the payroll and things, but other accruals, like say for example, with the credit, with the P card, right? If you're reporting on March's report, right, and the expense went off in April, some PIs want us to report in March. So
Okay,
I know we can change it.
Yeah, you can change the reporting date in RFG.
Yeah. The back and forth of changing, everything.
I know the back and forth I can't help with much.
In April, how can you report that?
Sometimes they would want to approve it. But
it also depends on the funder rules. Some of them say, right, it needs to be on a cash basis or on the origination of transaction.
It's supposed to be.
Depends on the funder.
When they're trying to spend out in the last few weeks of the grant.
Yeah, that should only happen at the end of the grant.
Go through.
Yeah.
No, I'm in that position right now.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
But you might have it at the end of the project. You could also have stuff that are allowed pre-award expenses where they need to change the date from whatever began before the project to being the first day of the project for it to fall in the right reporting period and deduct off the budget correctly for that period.
All that I want to say is it's quick if we don't do those types of changes. That's all that I want to say.
It's not quick for Cider. There are those types of changes for everyone.
And that is why Linda updated it, when she finished the report and not before.
Yeah.
But it strikes me that this is actually useful, not for that, but it's useful to know how to handle that. You know what I mean? So you get towards the end of the grant and you've got this much left in the kitty that you need to now spend out. It's not actually meant to track everything.
But the thing is also when you want to do this financial report, then you just press and it gives you this financial report.
This is quicker, this is helpful, I must say.
But this is not the financial report you're going to send to the funder.
No, as I said, the problem is some funders do a SF424 PDF,
Exactly.
some do this website like a welcome, some do an Excel sheet and a specific flavor of an Excel sheet or an existing template.
Yeah.
So trying to code 50 million shades of these things that also finance needs to be able to tweak to a new flavor, it's a
But
futile.
you don't have time for finance to produce a financial report.
So the idea is that similar to our existingly, they categorize the stuff and then they do a SUMIF or a pivot table or something to incorporate information. If you need to get to that point, at least you've got the final answer of what the grant reporting should have been on RFG. You can export that to Excel and they can just link that sheet up, that Excel export, into whatever your actual report is, or of course recapture information on the website or PDF or other web templates.
So RFG is a management tool, right? It is not, yes, we can export the data and stuff, but not export those things to the funder. That was the first. Can I say that the management tool?
Yeah.
That's a tool. It's not
Yes.
That's great.
See, it's 1 o'clock on the dot.
Yeah.
And this has been a very robust discussion. And then some people might need to leave, so we can carry on the discussion depending on who's got time.
The very quick thing to just say, it's got very limited, it's got a little tick box on the top right that says tooltips. They're not very useful, but it's just an initial precursor to, like Liezel was saying, hey, it needs to be a mobile app. there is also for almost every topic, there's a help videos link at the top right of the app. Then if you click on it, it'll take you to a video about that section specifically. Some of it will be, especially those things below the maintenance heading, will be more detailed nitty-gritty stuff for finance, but you can view it as well. As I said, nothing's obscured or hidden between what finance can see and what you can see.
Who designed?
Me. I scoped it and designed it, and 95% of the code says me.
Thank you.
So if development seems slow, that's because it's just my almost. There's some support in the back end side from ICTS guys who.
Well, Michael, we do this to you anyway. So, very good.
Yeah, very, very huge.
I'm seeing it for the first time. I don't have a project, but it makes sense. Because
Perfect.
I've worked on other projects before, and I wish I had this. Yeah.
On a slight level, maybe that says it's partially intuitive, perhaps.
Future drives for you.
It's
Thanks to Liezel as well. Thank you.
Thank you
so
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, stay quiet, you must just request a meeting. Don't be shy. Yeah.
For my side, things have been quite
Yeah.
fine, but I know you guys are.
Does anyone